Fallout 2 was one of my favorite games. I already made a whole other video gushing about my favorite quest in it, and it's just generally a game that means a lot to me. But nothing's perfect, and there's a specific part of Fallout 2 that pretty much every fan agrees is bad. The beginning. Everyone, and I mean everyone, including the people who made the damn game, agrees that it's at best a flawed, not very fun sequence, and at worst an awful first impression that completely turned them off from Fallout 2 and robbed them of the experience of an otherwise amazing game. So I think analyzing why it's bad is a valuable exercise because beginnings are important. It's where you teach a player the core gameplay mechanics, introduce them to your world, and draw them in to become invested in the larger experience. And in pinpointing where they failed at those things and how they might have done it better, we just might be able to learn some things about this aspect of game design. Enough with the preambles and rambles, let's dive right into the Temple of Trials. So, to begin, the Temple of Trials doesn't make a lot of sense to me from a lore perspective. This video is mainly about gameplay design, but I do think it's important to touch on this given that Fallout 2 is a story-driven game. Fallout 2 begins in Arroyo, a tribal village founded by the protagonist of the first game 80 years ago. The village has fallen on hard times, and you, the Chosen One, have been selected to venture out into the wasteland in search of an ancient technology that will help save your tribe. But before you can do that, the village elder tells you that you must first prove yourself worthy of this task.
For that proof, you must first journey to the Temple of Trials. If you survive, come back to me. We will talk more.
The first question I have here is, where did this temple come from? Did the villagers build it? It definitely seems like they worked on it partially, given that you can see the number 13 carved into a pedestal in this cutscene, but I find it unlikely that they built the entire structure. There's no other buildings like this in Arroyo. Everyone just lives in tents. Would they really put so much effort and resources into a building that no one would live in or even really do anything with, save for testing the Chosen One every generation or so, before they'd put any of that into constructing housing for themselves? It just doesn't seem likely to me. So was this a pre-war structure of some kind? It looks vaguely like a Mayan or Aztec temple or something, but this takes place in southern Oregon, which is not where those people were. Was it like a theme park or something? Again, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and it feels out of place. So, gameplay-wise, the main problem with the Temple of Trials is that it's boring. It's a series of bland, repetitive hallways where you fight some enemies, do some skill checks, and eventually have to defeat this guy in unarmed combat, which you probably won't since you're already low on health and didn't tag unarmed. Or you can just ask him to let you go by and he'll say yes. It's pointless doing like a play-by-play of the Temple of Trials because most of it would just be, and then you fight this scorpion, and then you fight this scorpion, and then you fight this ant, and then you fight this ant, and then you fight this scorpion, and then oh fuck. Contrast this with the first Fallout, which I think started off pretty decently. After a brief introductory cutscene, you take control of your character in the small cave outside their vault. The cave is populated by rats, by far the weakest enemy in the whole game. You can easily take them out in one shot or just run past them, and before you know it, you're out of the cave and on the world map screen, where you'll soon be discovering interesting locations, speaking to interesting NPCs, and taking in everything this post-apocalyptic world has to offer. You know, all the stuff that's good about the game. Meanwhile, in 2, the Temple of Trials is just a chore to get through, like a tax you have to pay every time you want to replay the game. You have to sit through this drawn-out, annoying tutorial every time before you can get to the part you actually came here for. And yeah, in case I forgot to mention it, the Temple of Trials is unskippable. You have to go through it in full every time. Not only is this very bad for repeat playthroughs, like I already said, but it's just stupid design in general. Fallout 2 is a sequel whose mechanics are by and large identical to the original. A large part of the target demographic is people who played the first game, so why are you forcing them into a tutorial for things they already know? The Temple of Trials is also just frustrating. The enemies aren't like Deathclaws or anything, but these ants and scorpions are noticeably stronger than the rats in the first game. And that combined with this opening taking much more time means that they have a decent shot at taking you down. And that's not fun, especially for new players who haven't gotten into the habit of saving every 5 seconds, and thus would be sent all the way to the beginning. And another potential source of frustration in these fights is that you're only given one item, a spear. This, I think, is actually a rather serious design issue. Fallout is an RPG in which you choose which skills to level up and invest in, and build your character around. So if you didn't tag melee weapons because you don't want to build around that playstyle, not only will the tutorial not teach you about the major mechanic that is ranged combat, but getting through the temple will be that much more of a chore because you have such a low hit chance with this poking stick, effectively punishing you for making a valid character choice that many, possibly most players will make. And I know what you're thinking. It wouldn't make sense for you to start with a gun because Arroyo is a primitive tribal society. And here's the thing. No, they didn't have to write it that way. There are tribes in the Fallout universe that use guns, and even if they weren't widespread, it's established that Arroyo trades with the outside world. It's not inconceivable that some trader could have sold them an old 10mm pistol, and they could have given that to the person who's on a very important quest to save their village. In fact, in the opening cutscene, we see what looks like a revolver in the Elder's tent. Why can't you give me that, Mom? Oh yeah, the village elder's your mom in this game, I didn't mention that. Actually, now that I'm back on the whole lore thing, one of the puzzles in the Temple of Trials has you use a chunk of military-grade explosives to blow up a door. What? How did they get these, and why are they using them for this dumb test instead of, like, a useful thing they could have used them for? And I believe it's implied other people have gone through the Temple of Trials, like previous village elders and stuff. So do they have a larger supply of explosives that they always use for this? Do they repair the door every time? It just doesn't make sense, and when Chris Avallone, a designer on Fallout 2, was asked about this in the Fallout Bible, he seemed to agree. And this is a good time to mention that the inclusion of the Temple of Trials doesn't reflect the designer's original intention. Rather, it was created at the behest of the marketing department at Interplay, who demanded that they add an extensive, unskippable tutorial level for reasons, and the devs simply weren't in a position to say no. And it's a real shame because Arroyo, the village proper that you go to after you're done with the temple, would have made a fine tutorial in and of itself. Right at the beginning, you can fight some spore plants, that's these nasty Venus flytrap looking guys, who are terrorizing the village shaman's garden.
The plants of dark soul have infested my garden again. Many seasons have touched my bones, and I am too frail for the fight which is eternal in nature.
Which could introduce you to the combat system and the existence of side quests. There's some other small basic side quests around town too, such as rescuing a dog, fixing the village's well, or getting some flint to sharpen your spear with. You're also, of course, told the basics of the main quest and where you should be going. And most crucially, if you don't want to bother with all of the side content, you can skip right on by it and just get into the adventure. You have the freedom to decide what you want to do. That thing that RPGs are all about. Imagining a version of Fallout 2 that just started you here really drives the point home what a counterproductive inclusion the Temple of Trials was. They already had a solid introduction that organically teaches the player everything they need to know and lets them get into things right away, but executive meddling forced the devs to precede that with an unnecessary tutorial that condescends to the player, wastes their time, and makes a terrible first impression. I could end the video there, but I think it's worthwhile to look at how some of the later entries in the series started their games, and see if they learned anything from 2's missteps. In the early 2000s, Interplay published Fallout Tactics and Fallout Brotherhood of Steel, but those games are weird and I don't feel like talking about them right now. So let's discuss what happened when Bethesda acquired the Fallout license and reimagined the series for a new generation and a new, much larger audience, with Fallout 3. The beginning of this game would be the first impression that would introduce so many new fans to the Fallout series, and introduce veteran players to Bethesda's new version of it. And in accomplishing this task, I think they did a pretty bad job, repeating many of the same mistakes that Interplay and Black Isle made with the Temple of Trials, and making a few new ones as well. In H. Bomber Guy's classic video about Fallout 3, he talks extensively about the game's intro and its shortcomings. I won't repeat everything Harris says in that video, since you can just watch it yourself if you want to, but the main bullet points for me are that it's way too long, way too boring, and once again, can't be skipped. They spend so much time padding the length between basic things like picking your stats and learning how to move, and that you have to press the shoot button to shoot, with these banal, uninteresting conversations and cutscenes before you can even get to the first real combat/exploration sequence, what could be considered analogous to the Temple of Trials. As frustrating as the temple could be for new players, and as long as it can feel, it's only 3 rooms. It pales in comparison to the amount of pointless dilly-dallying you have to sit through here before the actual game can even begin. Imagine you're a gamer and you want to replay Fallout 3, relive some of those old memories. What do you want to do? You want to explore the vast capital wasteland, revisit memorable locations like Megaton and Oasis, listen to those catchy 50s songs on the radio. You wanna, I don't know what you want to do, I don't like this game all that much, but I know a lot of people do, and what they want to do probably isn't crawl around on the floor as a baby and sit through mind-numbing conversations with guests at your birthday party. It takes like an hour before you can finally leave the vault and actually do what you probably turned on the game to do, explore the wasteland. How hard can it be to make a good first impression? Isn't there a Fallout game we can look to that avoids the pitfalls these previous entries fell into, and creates a near-perfect intro sequence that's fun and engaging and draws the player in and gets them excited to play more and... Yeah, you saw this coming, didn't you? Fallout New Vegas provides a masterclass on how to begin a game the right way, in organically teaching the player its mechanics, introducing you to its world, and not wasting time. Character creation is short and sweet. You have a brief conversation with Doc Mitchell that provides a hook for the main quest, you step outside the door, and literally everything in Good Springs from that point on is optional. You don't even have to talk to Victor, the cowboy robot who saved your life, who's important to the main plot. I don't know why you wouldn't want to talk to this beautiful man, but if you're speedrunning or something, you don't have to. If you do decide to stay, you can talk to Sunny Smiles, who can teach you the basic mechanics of the game. This tutorial is brief, simple, and again, completely optional. It focuses on new mechanics that were introduced in New Vegas, like iron sights and crafting, operating on the assumption that many of the people playing would have also played the massively popular previous title, and thus be familiar with the controls and core mechanics. But it does also provide some basic refreshers on those mechanics so that new players can easily get up to speed. And in contrast with the tutorials in 2 and 3, it doesn't overstay its welcome, and it isn't unpleasant or boring. I play through this sequence every time I revisit New Vegas, even though I know the game like the back of my hand at this point, just because it's fun. And also because I have a brain problem that gives me an unhealthy amount of empathy for fictional computerized characters, and not doing the tutorial means this nameless rando NPC might get eaten by geckos, and I don't want that to happen. She didn't do nothing wrong. Once you finish the tutorial, the town provides a host of content that seamlessly teaches you more about the gameplay and introduces you to the world. As mentioned, you have characters that will direct you on where to start with the main quest, and there's also characters to talk to that can provide information about the goings-on in the wasteland. And none of this feels like a clunky lore dump, but like authentic conversation with real people about the current events happening around them. Good Springs also contains the first major side quest, Ghost Town Gunfight, in which you recruit various people around town to help repel an attack from a gang of escaped convicts, each of whom requires a different dialogue-based skill check to be convinced, teaching the player another important mechanic while still making a quest that's fun and interesting in its own right. Or, if you'd rather, you can side with the Powder Gangers and help them take over the town. Yeah, it's not really a deep moral dilemma like you'll see later in the game, but it does introduce the idea of choice and that your actions will affect your reputation with various factions, 2 other very prominent aspects of this game. Also, remember how you could only use a spear in the Temple of Trials? Here, you get whatever low-level weapons you need based on your tagged skills. If you tag guns, you get a pistol. If you tagged energy weapons, you get a laser pistol. If you tagged explosives, you get some dynamite, etc. Whatever type of character you want to make, New Vegas lets you play and learn that playstyle right out of the gate. And that's just good design. Speaking of starting equipment, this does lead me into the only major complaint I have with New Vegas' intro, and it is actually kind of a major one depending on how you look at it. See, when the game first shipped, the intro was perfect. Absolutely no problems. Except for the horrific game-breaking bugs. Oh god, what is that? Help me, please. Oh my god, get it out of my sight. Oh my god. But in current day, when you get the Ultimate Edition of the game, first of all, that bug's been fixed, thanks Satan, but you also get all of the game's DLCs, including several pre-order item packs. These add in unique items that, rather than being distributed throughout the game world or given to you later, are added to your inventory right at the start, as indicated by these clunky pop-up messages. Not only is that just annoying and weird, getting all those extra weapons and armor just fundamentally breaks the early game balance. Why'd you give me this puny varmint rifle, Sonny? I have a caravan shotgun that's better than that in every way, idiot. If you play New Vegas, I highly recommend downloading one of these mods, which removes the DLC items from your starting inventory and simply distributes them throughout the game world. One of these mods was actually made by Josh Sawyer, the lead designer of New Vegas. And that's because, like with the Temple of Trials, this decision was the result of executive meddling. Sawyer was against giving you the DLC items like this because he knew it would mess up the balance of the early game, as seen in this clip from a charity livestream.
Do I think that the Courier Stash DLC breaks the early game? When making the game, were you aware that it was going to be there? Yes, I said, I hate this shit. I don't want to do it. I always hate pre-order bonuses. Always. I'm sorry. I hate them. I hate that shit. I hate it on every game. Just don't like it. And yeah, it wrecks everything.
So, to recap, the beginning of Fallout 2 is really bad and boring and bad, and the beginning of Fallout 3 is like that too, and the beginning of Fallout New Vegas is really good, except for the one thing that isn't good, and that's just kind of the way it is, in my opinion. I know I'm supposed to do like a big grand conclusion where I summarize my points in a really satisfying, intelligent way, but I'm actually having really bad writer's block right now, so instead I'd like to end things by talking about this dog. While I was recording footage for the New Vegas section, I noticed that this dog's eyes had like glitched out. They're like floating beside its head. It's really creepy and weird. Anyway, yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Love ya. Bye.